Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's the Full 40 with Chris, Rob, and Willie, back after the Michigan State loss. It is Sunday, November 20th at around 9:30 in the morning, and we are on the eve of Thanksgiving week, which means the turkey tournaments are arriving, and we have quite a bit to talk about despite only having one game to analyze. So we'll break down the Michigan State game. We'll talk a couple narratives. We got some early narratives going for the season already for this team.
We do.
And then we'll talk about what's becoming very important week ahead. So let's jump in right there. Villanova loses to Michigan State 73-71 at the Breslin Center in Michigan on Friday evening. And that game went in a couple different flows. First 5-10 minutes looked pretty good. Second quarter of that game looked pretty bad. Third quarter of that game also looked pretty bad. And then the fourth quarter of the game was easily the best that we've looked all season long. And we almost come away with a victory. It wasn't a great play, but it's because Tom Izzo's a great coach and blew it up. But it wasn't a great play, but Dixon's shot rattled out pretty much at the buzzer there. If that goes down, we're having a different conversation right now. But nevertheless, it did not. We are left with a moral victory at most. A little bit of Ken Pom juice because we improved our Ken Pom on the strength of a 2-point loss. But neither here nor there. We had some funny takeaways, right? Because it wasn't the worst outing that we've seen, and it kind of left us a little bit optimistic maybe coming out of it, but still we're 500.
Yeah, it's optimistic is tough. I have to admit, Nicole and I were watching this game, and if anybody's watching the video, I'm sitting in a stairwell in the Philadelphia Westin Hotel, and those are the lengths we go to bring you guys the content you deserve. Nicole and I were watching this game, and after the first half, her head was in the pillow. She was just like, I'm done with this. Like, I can't watch it. And it was admittedly frustrating. So to see the guys fight back was great. And to see that they had some of that tenacity to just not give up on it was awesome. I do wonder a little bit how much of it is Michigan State taking their foot off the gas, but that's neither here nor there. They did show the fight. I'm not a big moral victory guy, but I'll take the fact that we kept it close on their home court on a Michigan State team that's proven to be pretty competitive. And I will say, like, anybody who knows how I was watching the game knows I was definitely pretty pissed at some points. But with a day of hindsight and reflection, I'm like, all right, there's some stuff we can take away from this. But I think, Chris, to your point, like, this week is so critical. Like, we're going to learn so much about this team. And I think after this coming weekend, after the turkey tournament, you're going to have a pretty good feel for what this Villanova team could be. Again, obviously we're assuming without Cam Whitmore and without Justin Moore, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, Rob, something you said is learning a little bit about this team. And I feel as if this Michigan State game taught me the most I've seen of this team the entire year. Obviously, the first quarter of the game went well. Middle 2 quarters were a mess. But seeing the fight, seeing the fact that even if Michigan State did take their foot off the gas, which I'm not really sure that they did, but we came and we took that game back to them. We showed fight that, frankly, I was unsure if we had. I believed it because we're Villanova and this is how we play, but that team hadn't really shown it at any point. The Temple game was a little bit different because Dixon was out, and it was just kind of as simple as putting Dixon back in the game that changed it. But this was, we adjusted, we penetrated, we started playing what looks like Villanova basketball again. We were able to get to the rim. We were shooting threes a little bit better. I felt like that was the best and realistically like 8 minutes of Villanova basketball that we've seen all year. So I wouldn't call it a moral victory, but it's definitely letting me know that this team, I feel better about this game than I did about Delaware State.
Yep.
I feel better about this team right now than I did on Monday after Delaware State. So positive direction despite a negative result.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty well said.
let's just I think we have to chop it up into two different conversations because we lost this week is now vital, right? Like, so we have to have the conversation around like just realistically what the work this team needs to do. Still shorthanded, which I think is also a conversation that we need to have. But still shorthanded. We have to figure out, okay, what does this team need to accomplish to keep itself safe, so to speak, and tread water enough till we get fully healthy. But the conversation around like, okay, like directionally, like, is this something that we can take away? I think yes. But let's talk about a few things that went wrong first. So number one thing, in my view, that went wrong in this game was over stick-to-itiveness to the game plan, I guess is what I'll say. And specifically, I mean, around 3-point defense.
Oh my God, terrible.
It was obvious that the scout on Michigan State that our guys put together, whatever assistant put it together, like was to sag off their shooters and let them beat you from the 3-point line, which they did.
They did.
So
they shot 52% on the day. It's pretty good.
So we got throttled on 3-point defense, but I also think like there was an element of stick-to-itiveness to the scout, but there was two other things that was an issue for me. One, it's one thing to sag and to have guys, get looks, so to speak.
Yes.
But our closeouts were so slow, painfully slow. There was second guessing. We were not closing down on shooters, not flying out, not getting hands in the air early enough. Like we weren't doing anything to bother any of their shots. So
it wasn't even sagging. It was just like, I'm just gonna give you the shot, and like lazily, half-heartedly contested. It was very, very strange. Like you can do the sag and still apply some pressure, but I don't know. It was like they overemphasized that message too much, and it absolutely burned us. And then like it happened the entire game too. That's what drove me crazy about it, was that it started happening. You think they'd be like, okay, guys, like we talked about the sag thing, like step it up a little bit, apply a little bit of pressure. And just like, no, just going to keep rolling with it. And they hit it all game nonstop.
The second bit that was frustrating to me a little bit was Michigan State was moving on a lot of screens. I'm not blaming the referees. Like their action was really good. It was kind of hard to pick up. They were moving on a ton of screens in my view. There was two things that I think needed to happen there. I think Kyle Neptune needed to be a little bit more in the ref's ear. Young coach trying to figure out exactly what his limits are. I get that. He definitely was more animated with the referees this game than I've noticed than he was in previous games. But I feel like he wasn't just like, that's one of those things where you tap the ref on the shoulder and say, hey guys, like they're moving on a lot of screens here. You gotta do that. The second bit is that I feel like our guys need to be more aggressive through that and blow up those screens a little bit. And if you get an offensive foul, at least you make or a defensive foul on that type of play, at least you make the other team think a little bit twice before they're like in your way so much. So I feel like we needed to use our ability to physically dominate a game to make them pay a little bit more for that. And I don't think we did that in this game.
I mean, Jordan Longino, I don't know if you know, is a former football player. So perhaps he should have just been out there. So good. But no, I think your point's totally valid. Like our team, our guys are jacked. Like have somebody run through the screen with a little bit of force and you'll teach them a lesson. I like it.
So something I want to call out though is with the game plan. I didn't hate the game plan. I liked the sagging off shooters. And yeah, we thought like maybe we should have closed out on Hauser a bit better. I don't know what our scout was there.
Hauser's the one in particular that was bad.
We were closing out pretty shittily on Hauser. I think what I wanted to call out was the person who killed us was AJ Hogard, who shot 3 of 6 from 3. Let the record show in AJ Hogard's college career, which up to this point has been, I think, what are we looking at, like 60 something games. He had made 10 3-pointers his entire college career. He's never been a 3-point shooter, and he went 3 of 6 versus us.
Yeah.
He shot, for his career, he's shooting 21% from 3. Yeah. The person who beat us was the person who wasn't supposed to. Yeah. And I get giving him the ability to shoot that because At no point in his college career has he ever shown the ability to do that. And he did. Kudos, hats off to him. He made the shots. I don't hate going down by that because if AJ Hogarth shoots 21%, goes 1 of 6, we're talking about a win today. So all in all, there's definitely adjustments to be made, but I think we came in with the right game plan. It's execution.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the comment too. I think the execution point is the key point for me is that the closing out was just I remember one Slater was in the corner and like he clearly thought twice, like, am I gonna go out? Am I not gonna go out? And then I think it was Hogarth actually who buried the 3 from that corner in that play. I might be wrong, but that's just one of those things where like, yeah, guys got the ball, like close out on the ball a little bit, right? So to your point, like any type of additional pressure put on their 3-point shooting, like changes that game. So that was one that was tough to handle. Our 3-point shooting woes are a little bit of an early season narrative, if you will, because it's just we've now had 2 or 3 straight games. Like, well, Temple game we shot the ball 7 times, which was ridiculous. But then the Delaware State game we were 0 for the first half, and the Michigan State game we were pretty bad throughout. Got a little bit better at the end there. This is something that I feel like will self-correct. We're like 85% from the free throw line. So like usually like free throw percentage for a team and 2-point percentage for a team is a pretty good indicator if a team's a good shooting team or not. And so you'd expect, like, we're not going to be like a bad shooting team. We're not going to be as good as years past, at least not till Moore and Whitmore come back. But we are unnaturally bad from 3 right now. So again, that's another factor. Some of that was shot quality. I felt like we were trying to chuck them a little bit this past game, but broadly speaking, like I just expect more to go down.
I mean, I think the chunk of it comes down to Caleb, and it's not anything that Caleb's doing wrong, but the way Caleb's favorite shot is he comes off of Eric Dixon's screen. If someone goes under, he pulls immediately and hits it. What's happened? I don't know why. I don't know why it took people this long to self-correct in the first place. They should have been doing it in the tournament run, but they're hedging hard on his screens. They're not going under on Dixon. They're both hedging hard, pushing up, and now Caleb's not able to get into his 1-2 and pull up. So he's dribbling, he's over dribbling, he's forcing, he's trying to get a foul, and he's not hitting threes. Caleb's shooting 40% from 3 on the season, which looks great, but 6 of his makes were from the Delaware State game. He is 2 of his last 13. I think that's the narrative that I look at is how do we self-correct Caleb? And I think it's in part because Caleb's on-ball demands are higher. They're hedging harder, so he's not able to do that. And we need, whether it's Chris Arch, we need Slater, we need whomever to just get Caleb off the ball 3-point attempts where he's not taking it, where he's not the one, like he's not creating himself. Get him off the ball, get him open 3-point attempts. And I think we're going to start seeing them kind of get in. But he's my big one where I look at him like, that's the anomaly to me. And we know he's a great shooter. He's going to self-correct. It's just what kind of shots are we getting him? And can we get him the right shots? And can we figure out a counter to them hedging hard, which will probably be something of Dixon taking more threes and popping out a little bit more or diving and then figuring out from there.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last podcast too. Like this part of this goes back to the fact that everybody can key on Caleb right now as our primary offensive threat. And whereas in years past, he was the 3, the 4th option, like he was just there and was the beneficiary of the rest of the offense. I will say though, while yes, I think it's obviously going to improve, and ideally if Moore comes back healthy, he's a good 3-point shooter. The ceiling for this team on 3-point shooting is not nearly as high as it has been in years past. Like the history of shooters that we have playing right now is not nearly as strong. Like we don't have a Colin Gillespie. We don't, Jermaine was up and down, but Jermaine had like years where he shot 38% for 3. So like, I don't think we're going to shoot as high of a percentage as we do historically. That's it. We are shooting just absolutely abysmally right now. We shot 28% in our last game. Granted, if you take Caleb out of that, we shot like 33%. But that's not how basketball games work. So you can't just add and subtract players and make the stats work. But regardless, I think it's a caveat for this team. Like, don't expect, as a fan base, don't expect us to be raining threes down like we have historically. It's just not that. The lineup's just not constructed like that.
A
But
big
I think
switch.
we need to talk about Dixon, though. I know we'll get to that because he is.
One thing I wanted to call out is a big thing that I think we'll see is how quickly does Hausen come along defensively, because it's very clear, and I'm okay with, if Hausen's getting in 10 minutes, he's taking 5 3-pointers. I'm okay with that idea because it stretches the floor. He's already a knockdown. He hit a big 3 in the Michigan State game. If he can figure it out defensively, I like it. Brizzy profiled as a great shooter, hasn't really shot too many 3-pointers yet. It's been like maybe 5 he shot this season.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what happens there. Armstrong's been decent, but we'll see how that looks like. I mean, everything, like you all know, everything changes once Justin comes back. That's what we're waiting for.
Maybe we'll see. Quick note on Hausen. His release is so fast.
Yeah, he's really good.
Like, he is just teed up, and he knows his job is to shoot 3-pointers. Like, he only played 5 minutes against Michigan State, but he's clearly out there. Like, he runs down the court, gets in the corner, and is basically like, I am ready to shoot the ball. And as soon as it hits his hands, it's going up, which I love. Because you know what you're supposed to do and you're ready to execute on it. That's what we need. We need people who are like, this is my job. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do it. And I'm totally down for it. I want more Hausen. I was big on Hausen last time too. I want more Hausen. 5 minutes, not enough. My notes, Kyle.
Yeah. So look, I want to touch on the Caleb conversation a little bit, because I don't know if there's a player who is more impacted by the current injury situation than Caleb. Because Caleb is like, one thing we've learned, Caleb's not an on-ball guy. Like, and we kind of knew that coming into the season. He can be an on-ball guy if he's going to be the guy who's posting up. He can be if he's the post-up guy. But he's not an on-ball, like, and he's pressing. I think the issue with his shot is that he's pressing. I think he's like trying to do a little bit too much, because he kind of has to.
He has to. Absolutely.
In the past, the game could kind of come to him, and then he just had to be ready to do his job when it was time.
Totally.
And now he takes on an advanced role. He did that successfully in an advanced role when he was a younger guy at Tulane. But in this system, it's a little bit of a different system. So we need to see. The conversation around this team is with a decent point guard. Like, I think I said to you, Rob, the other day, with Tony Chenault as point guard, we're like a 4-0 team right now. And I'm not criticizing Tony Chenault. I'm more saying that just like a capable, like, solid veteran point guard that can just like do a number of different things on a basketball court.
Weird example, but I see where you're going with it.
I'm trying
I would pick a different player, but yes, I get
but like, I could say Colin Gillespie, but like, that's not fair. Like, you can't just plug an All-American into this.
I agree with your premise. I don't like the example because Tony just did not shoot the ball. Period. Yeah. But anyway, continue.
Yeah.
So the point guard situation, I think actually the Michigan State game complicated it in my eyes. Like, Armstrong, like, let's talk a little.
This is a narrative. This is an early season.
This is definitely this is the early season narrative, and there's other ones that kind of float around it. But the early season narrative around the point guard position got more complicated because, candidly, Chris Archidiakono had a pretty damn good second half, and there was moments where he didn't do well, but there's moments where everyone doesn't do well. But he was, in that second half, he was aggressive defensively. The foul call on him at the end there was fucking bullshit. Like, that was
a terrible call.
That was absolutely a horrible call.
Ridiculous.
But
I forgot about that.
He was aggressive defensively. He shot the ball. Like, it sounds like simple.
Sometimes.
Yeah. He hit a 3. I think he had 5 points in a quick stretch there. But he also like created on offense. Like, he was taking what the defense gave him a little bit more and actually making them pay for it, which made the whole offense run a lot better, because the anatomy of that comeback, right, was that we started playing with a lot more aggression on offense, both him and Slater in particular were way more aggressive in that final quarter of the game, which is, I think, what really turned the tide for us offensively. But the other factor here is that we saw Kyle continues to play Brizzy and Armstrong to his credit. But we saw chunks of them where, okay, they were doing a little bit of couple things there where they weren't as strong. I thought Brizzy got lost in the defense. I think I saw Caleb shove him into position at one point in time. And then Armstrong, candidly, I saw a couple times where he a little bit freelanced on offense a little bit and went outside of our what we do, so to speak, on the offensive side.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I agree. Arch looked better in moments in the second half and showed more of what you want to see. I still think for a guy who played 30 minutes, the production and the contribution is lower than what I would want to see relative to what I think an Armstrong and a Brizzy can bring to the table. Like, yes, there were Arch definitely, he did shoot the ball more. Like, he had 3 shots, and then I think a couple others where he got a couple fouls as well too. But like, there were also times where he just passed up on looks. There was one time I stood up and I just like screamed at the TV because he actually flew by a guy, beat his man, which like never happens, and has a clean look at the hoop, and then just decides to dribble under the hoop and pass out. And I was like, what are you doing, man? Like, he's still not totally there. So like some elements of it click, and then some elements of it still don't click. So for me, while yes, there were some positives from that, I still would rather see more of the development. I'll take some of the downside. I'll take some of that freelancing, if you will, with like an Armstrong and a Brizzy, because like what that means is, you know, for Armstrong in particular, I love Armstrong. I love the ball in his hands. He's so smooth. He carries the ball like a point guard in my mind. He like the dribble, the control, just the movement is so it is what I think of when I think about like a really silky smooth point guard. So like, yeah, if he makes a mistake, because like he beat somebody and created, and then he took an errant shot, I'm like, all right, well, you're doing that creation, which our offense is lacking. Like we talked about, he can do that. He can create the separation. He can draw people in, and then he can kick it out. So he needs to make a better decision so he doesn't take a bad shot. But he's bringing something different to the table that nobody else on this team is bringing to the table. Because as the point you just made about Caleb, like we want the ball out of Caleb's hands so Mark can create, so somebody can create and then can find Caleb. And Mark Armstrong brings that skill set to the table in a way that nobody else on this team does. Full stop.
I'm 100% team Mark. I'm 100% team Brizzy should be starting. I think what we're dealing with is the reality that it's going to be Chris Arch starting until Mark or Brizzy take it from him. And to Chris's point earlier, this was Arch's first game. I'm not saying like, oh no, I can do this. The big number for me is not the scoring. It was the fact that he had 4 assists. If Chris Arch for the rest of the year averages 6 points and gets 4 assists a game, I will live with that. I will live with that being in the starting lineup. Him being able to drive, and he blew by Tyson Walker like 2 or 3 times, which I don't know what the hell that was.
Tyson Walker doesn't know how that happened.
Yes. There was one point that Arch like crossed over, pulled it back. He may have been able to sit him down. Like he like would have crossed him over. But I 100% agree with the finishing at the rim. But he 6, like if you just look at it in a vacuum, 6 points, 4 assists. If that's what Chris Arch gives us for the rest of the year, I understand the 20 to 25, 30 minutes. He needs to be what he was in the second half to justify that. Otherwise, we are doing a disservice to both Brizzy, Armstrong.
Yeah.
If he's not doing that.
Yeah. Look, my take is I'm kind of on team. Arch needs to look. 30 minutes is still too much for me because of everything that you guys have said, and I agree, Rob, on the Armstrong needs like credit for the creation. So I agree wholeheartedly on that point. But like, yeah, that's just something that like he needs to do something like that. Get sat down and say, "Good job on the creation. You had open shooters around you. Like, keep your head up. Don't just play hero ball. Right? Like,
Yeah.
and like, there's nothing like, and I'm not saying hero ball in the sense of like, I'm criticizing him, calling him a selfish player or anything like that. He just got into a situation where he kind of got lost in in that play that I'm particularly referencing, where he took like a fadeaway jumper from the elbow, which is like a low percentage, low effective field goal percentage shot. So it's just not what the analytics tell you to do. But that being said, look, we need someone to create. And I think that's the comment that we're making for Arch in the second half, is that he started to do some creation. Right? Like,
Yeah.
so he blows by a guy, gets to the rim, creates havoc on the defensive end. Like, we need that, because to the point on Caleb that we started this conversation with, like, Caleb is not going to be a 40% 3-point shooter like he can be, unless he is off the ball and someone is playing competently at the point guard position around him. So where I kind of come to in all of this is that until Moore is back, and whatever that may be, like, I think it's got to be like almost like a 20-20-20 type of situation where like all these guys get like 20 minutes or so on the floor.
I mean, if it was 20-20-20, I think I'd be less animated than I am now. Because like 20 minutes is like, that's great playing time for Mark. That's great playing time for Brizzy. Like they can develop that, what they're playing right now, 10, they got 13 and 12 this past game. It's not enough. It's not enough to develop that rapport, to really get comfortable in that offense and to make some of those mistakes. So if we get to 20-20-20, I think that's great. Like that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
So I think the next thing we're thinking about is, okay, so Michigan State happened and we're 2-2, but now we're looking at the PK 85. And as I look about this, I think about our non-conference as a whole. Like I'm not going to get into the individual games, and then we'll touch that, but I want to talk about our non-conference as a whole. If we don't, basically the way I think about it is, if we go 2-1 in the PK 85 in any situation, if we lose the first one, we win the next two. Realistically, beating Iowa State's the most straightforward. If we're going to look at ourselves as a top 5 seed, we need to go 2-1 in the PK 85. It won't happen without that. Yeah. If we go 1-2,
we have to have a really good fucking December conversation.
And in that really good December, we're also thinking of like, if the only quality wins we have on our resume are, let's say it's Iowa State, let's say it's Oklahoma, Boston College isn't a quality win, frankly.
Not a quality win.
Yeah, it's not a quality win. Like we're looking at the like, maybe we're a 9 seed with a good Big East run, but like the Big East is probably the deepest it's going to be. It's been since like 2017. When Xavier was a 1 seed. So that's my overall thing as we go into the PK 85. It's we have to go 2-1. Otherwise we're looking at a low seed.
Yeah. And the Big East, right? Like, I don't think we're ready to fully do a look around the conference, but just in like short form here, the Big East is underperforming in the out of conference right now. So the opportunities for like high quality quad 1 wins are going to be in the toilet. Like we're not going to have like UConn, maybe Xavier, maybe Creighton probably will be quad 1 games at home. Other than that, there won't be a single quad 1 game on the schedule. So that is troubling, right? Like away, because the quad 1 goes up to like 75 away or something like that. Like away, that becomes a different conversation, and we'll have a handful of those throughout the year. But then there's like these there's going to be these quad 2 games like at Marquette, right? Who is going to be like a quad 2 opponent away, or maybe a borderline quad 2 opponent away, who is like good. Like, it's like games that you can lose, but also don't, like, they barely help your resume. Yeah. So it is. So I agree wholeheartedly with the 9 seed comment, because you could find yourself in that situation because we just kind of run out of opportunities, and Oklahoma isn't going to be this amazing out of conference win. So like we have to find a way to mix it up here in the PK 85. And that's kind of the unfortunate result of losing to Michigan State is that, okay, you had an opportunity, you came close, you feel better about the team, but then like, okay, realistically, put pen to paper, you
Yeah.
are
Got work.
you are back up against the wall. We're 2-2. We're playing on the other side of the country on Thanksgiving versus an Iowa State team that has a lot of transfers in and a lot of turnover in their team, but a team that has some of the parts that made a Sweet 16 last year, and is a tough-minded, slugfest oriented Big 12 team that can make an ugly game. That can make it very ugly and could come down to the final few possessions. And then you win that game, you expect to play in North Carolina, which is really like the biggest opportunity that we're going to have, at least on paper, before the final game of that, which could look like which will be one of Michigan State, UConn, Oregon, and Alabama. So it's like, I feel like Iowa State is I don't want to say it's a must win, but it's as
Kind of a
I'll
must.
call it. I'll call it a must
it's
win.
as close to a must win as you're going to have, like 5 games into a basketball season.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what you do is if you lose to Iowa State, then you play Portland, and that's a shit game, right?
It's a shit
then-
game, by the way, on their like basically home floor. So
Yeah.
it's
And also a Portland team that's like gonna be
Decent.
kind of contending in the WCs. Not contending, but like contending, meaning
They'll be good.
they'll be able to maybe beat St. Mary's, won't touch Gonzaga.
Yeah.
And then you pick up whoever lost games in the bottom half of the bracket. It's like, okay, fine.
right.
Yeah.
And then you get into a situation where we could be playing UConn or Michigan State, and like, yeah, like that's not great. Like the fact that we have a situation where we could be playing UConn 4 games in this year is not particularly helpful to either team's resume.
Yeah.
And Michigan State, it's not particularly helpful to play them again, because I guess if you win on a neutral court, then all of a sudden you feel like a little bit good, and it validates the comeback, so to speak, at the end of that game. But you could also lose and kind of revalidate that loss again. So it's a situation where like that's kind of no win in that circumstance. So you're left with like hopefully getting Oregon or Alabama.
Honestly, the bottom half of the bracket, regardless of whether we win our first game or not, is weird anyway. Like we're basically trying to avoid half of the teams
Yeah.
in the bottom half of the bracket. Like we don't want to play UConn because of the reason you just articulated. We don't really want to play Michigan State either, because like, all right, we just played them. Like there's not a ton of upside here, and there's a ton of downside. So like, I don't know. Either way, we're kind of hoping things break our way in the bottom half, which is just It's weird. I've never really felt that way about a turkey tournament. You know, obviously you're like, oh, these are the teams we want to play. Like I think back a couple of years ago, like some of the top teams, whatever tournament was, just picked up a loss. I think it was like Purdue and Tennessee or something like that. It would be a really weird bracket, but like this one just seems particularly odd in that we could play a number of these teams so many times. Just like what? Why?
Also, from like a basketball standpoint, I don't want to play UConn right now. Like I just don't like the way we match up with them with our guys hurt.
We're not ready.
We're not ready to play.
We're not ready to face UConn right now. Be like very real.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this we can get into our other narrative. It's a chance for Slim Dix to show that he is a better Big East Player of the Year than oh gosh, my brain just
Adama Sanogo.
Yeah.
The problem is they have Adama Sanogo, and now they have Donovan Clingan, who's like 7'2", giant, and people don't know how to fucking even guard him right now.
He's absurd.
Yeah. So UConn found a bigger guy than Adama Sanogo somehow. And that team is super athletic. They're gonna get up and down the court, and that's a game that can get away from us early and like be a confidence ruiner for us going into Big East play. I'm sure there will be a random UConn fan who listens to this and clips this part, but yeah, I don't care. I don't want a singular part of UConn until December 27th or 8th or whatever our game against them is. And I don't want them really then either, but I could deal with that. So here's what we're left with. Like Iowa State game is a game versus KenPom 53 is where KenPom has them right now. They're 2-0. They haven't really had much to test them yet. They're okay. Like this is a game where Ken Pom has us as 3-point favorites. It's a doable game for sure. Like, we should beat them. They've had enough turnover in their team where they're also still trying to figure things out with who they are as a squad. We expect them to play slow. We expect them to be not particularly strong on offense, especially because they've lost Isaac Brockington from last year's team. And they have so many newcomers, and they kind of prefer that rock fight style anyway. There's a team that kind of squeaked into last year's NCAA tournament and kind of went on a pretty unexpected Sweet 16 run. So this is a team that we candidly, even with our team right now that's currently constructed on the roster, like it should play well into our hands. Like, we should be able to. We're going to be comfortable with the pace they want to play, and it's something that we are. And it's something that we kind of have to win. Like, our backs are up against the wall. And I expect these guys to come out with the fire that they showed in the last 10 minutes that they played against Michigan State.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Iowa State's an interesting matchup for us. Like you said, nothing worries me on paper. There's not a player I'm like, okay, this is going to be a person we need to worry about. I mean, I think we have the best player on the floor in Eric Dixon. I think their size at guard is good. I'm not really too worried from a speed strength perspective. I think we'll match up fine. It's just going to be a rock fight. They're deep. They're experienced, which is going to be huge kind of. Their experience is going to help them when it comes down to if this is a close game and we're in the final 5 minutes. They have a bunch of seniors. The only difference is they have a bunch of seniors who have all done it at individual places, and it's how does this kind of work together? How does TJ Otzelberger pull them all? From our standpoint, I think if we're able to get out of, if we can, I'm going to call it escape Iowa State with a win. I feel like it's going to be close.
Yeah.
I feel pretty good where I think that's going to be a huge momentum builder for us. And I'll say it, don't be surprised if we take it to UNC. If we beat Iowa State, I think that will be the thing where things start flowing for us, because we're going to be Iowa State's first test, and UNC also will not have been tested yet, and UNC's been struggling. So we'll see, frankly, we'll just see if we get to UNC, how Caleb Love does. Because if Caleb Love is on, there's no shot. That's just the way the game works. When he's hot, he's the best player in the country. And when he's not, he's not. But until then, we got to focus on Iowa State. They're deep, they're smart, they're going to be well coached, and they defend the hell out of the ball. I think they're 10th in defense. Ken Pom might even have them a little bit higher. So yeah, we're good.
This week is going to be like, every game is going to change the complexion of the outlook of the season.
Yeah,
it's like okay, you beat Iowa State. Okay, all of a sudden you feel a lot more comfortable than you did before the game, right? Then you get North Carolina. We're expecting to get North Carolina. I think we will. But you get North Carolina, and yeah, I agree. This is a team that's and the question mark around North Carolina is, simply put, is this the team that beat Duke at Cameron Indoor in Coach K's final game at Cameron Indoor, and beat Duke in the Final Four game, and had Kansas on the ropes in the national championship game? Or is this the team that almost missed the NCAA tournament and kind of sucked it up versus Syracuse late in that year, and looked kind of fucking lost for most of that season last year? Which team is the real team? Probably right now it's a little bit in the middle. But do we have the opportunity to get some type of game where we turn that into a rock fight and make that a little bit of a hectic matchup where we have a chance to be hanging with them in the final few possessions of the game? Their Ken Pom ranking, by the way, is not particularly great. So Ken Pom's only going to have that on a neutral court. Ken Pom's going to have that at probably a 3-4 point game to their favor. So it's not going to be this. It's not going to be this massive hole that we have to dig out of, so to speak.
You guys are giving us a lot of credit here. So I'm with you. I think we'll pull out the Iowa State game, and assuming that happens, we run into UNC. I get what you're saying, Bellotti, but man, like let's give UNC a little bit more credit here. Like they're basically returning their whole team, and
Yeah.
we've seen the value firsthand of bringing a whole team back. Like we know the value of continuity, and we know the struggles that we're experiencing right now when you don't have that continuity, and that in and of itself gives them a huge building block and a huge step up. They just know how one another are going to play. They know how to react. They're so familiar with the system. Like this is a pretty old team for the most part. Like, yes, I know Roy Williams was there for a few years and then Davis took over, but like these guys know how to play together. So I'd love to be optimistic and say like, yeah, we're gonna take it to UNC. I just don't think that's realistic. I think we're gonna get beat. We'll get beat pretty handily.
Yeah, look, I think that
Willie's shaking his head. He's like, nah. He's got the optimism today. He's got that Sunday. He's got that World Cup kickoff optimism.
I don't even know if it's optimism about us per se. I think UNC's a little overrated.
Okay.
And I think it's as of right, like they're number one in the country. They're not the best team in the country. They've struggled to put away every single team they've played. There's a weird kind of fit between Baycott and Nance, and Leaky Black's like shooting better, but how real is it? As I watch them, I'm like, they are figuring it out. Now, obviously, they have the Final Four run, they have all this continuity. I love that. Like, I think when they're clicking, and Kayla loves clicking, I can't see it. Like, they're fucking phenomenal. I just think that if it happens, if we get them, I think it's going to be a closer game than we imagine. Also, UNC plays today. They face James Madison, who's one of my sneaky like mid-major picks. Like, don't be shocked if you look up and UNC's like in a 5-point game with James Madison, because they've been in a 5-point game with every single one of these teams. I think they played UNC Wilmington earlier this year, and the head coach of UNC Wilmington basically said who also played UConn and was like, UConn's the best team you've seen all year.
Yeah.
So
right. This is a team that, look, forget everything else. This is a team that last year, like when you get into the question of who they are, right? Like when the lights shine brightest, they were really good.
Yeah.
Like point blank. There's no taking that away from them at all. They had points in that season last year where they didn't even look like a tournament team, and candidly kind of snuck in on name to some degree. And they did that because they weren't focused. They were playing like disjointed basketball. It looked like they didn't give a fuck, candidly, at a lot of points in time. And so where I think we could potentially make this a game if we get them and are there, like, by the way,
it's a big if. Yeah.
It's a big if, right? Like, you all be for naught, we could be playing Portland, right? So like, but where I think we can make this a game is kind of on culture, is that our guys are going to play that 40 minutes a game, et cetera. And they're going to get up on a big lead, take time off, whatever. They're not, that's where I think this game could go.
These are some hot takes, guys. This is the number one.
Look, do I expect to lose the game versus North Carolina? Yes, I expect to lose the game versus North Carolina. Let me just be 100% clear on that fact. I expect to win versus Iowa State. I expect to lose to North Carolina, and I expect to get like Alabama in the final game, and we'll have a JQ bowl. But that's kind of, but I do think that there is a world in which they're kind of like just flat or don't give a fuck. Like this team is, Rob, if they don't make that tournament run, or if they lose to Baylor in overtime in the round of 32, which they didn't, but like.
This comparison to me is actually like UCLA the year prior.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
It's the same thing. And then UCLA came back the next year and put together quite a nice year. So like this to me of like, oh, well, they didn't, we don't know who they are. I'm like, no, we know who they are. Like they put it together in March. And like we're putting a little bit of a double standard here, because we love to talk about Villanova's development through the year and how you measure Villanova's success in February and March. And that's the same thing with this North Carolina did. Yes, they had a slow start, but guess what? They put it together when it mattered, and they're bringing back the same team that put it together when it mattered. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until I see otherwise.
So I guess where I'm thinking about is, once again, I fully think we could lose. There's no part of me that's like, this is a guarantee win. What I'm saying though is, they put it together when it matters. Does this point matter to them?
Hmm.
Are they going to
that's-
be locked in
that's-
on Thanksgiving Day versus Portland,
Yeah.
like in the first place? Or like how locked in are they going to be? If they're locked in, we're not touching it. There's no shot if they're locked in. Are they going to be locked in? I'd imagine just because of the name on the front of the jersey for Villanova, they would be locked in, but we don't know that. And so all I'm putting out there is, first off, we have the biggest if in the world because we could very easily lose to Iowa State and then we're going to look stupid as hell. But assuming we beat Iowa State, I think that's a game that I don't look at and like that's an auto loss. I'm like, it's potentially there.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is not a North Carolina podcast. We spent a lot of time on North Carolina. All right. So what's our prediction here? We're all saying Iowa State is a win, and we're assuming we get North Carolina. I'm saying loss to North Carolina.
I'm taking a loss because it's a safe move, but I do agree with Willie that I see a world in which we find a way to win that game.
All right.
But I'm taking a
brass
loss.
tacks. You taking a win or a loss?
Fellas, we're going to be hosting the PK85 championship. We're going to be throwing it up there. We're going to be dancing, and we're going to feel completely different. I don't know what's in my system right now, but we're going to do it.
I know from before the conversation before that whatever is in your system was less than it was when you woke up.
Most of the stuff that's been in my system has left the building.
Amazing. All right. So
I like it. I like the optimism because
somebody's got to be optimistic.
Yeah.
But, all right. So then third game.
We're gonna lose by 40.
Look, that's absolutely possible. We can get run by North Carolina. That's why I'm coming out.
We knock off UNC and then we play Michigan State again. They just they trounce us.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Honestly, I'd take that.
Yeah,
the championship game 2-1.
Yeah, I'd take that for sure.
The team the team that I do not want to see in this tournament is UConn. Like, I think I've laid that out already. Like, I want no part of them. They haven't been tested yet either, but they have fucking demolished everything in their path, and they've been on a war path earlier this year.
They're going to play Delaware State either today or tomorrow, and they're going to win by like 70.
Yeah, they're going to demolish them. So this is I like what I'm seeing from this UConn team. It's like a lot. They kind of
I like them.
They have the shades of UConn of old. They have the shades of Jim Calhoun UConn. Now I still think there's a lot of questions around their guard play. But their forwards and their wings are so athletic and so good. And Adama Sanogo has hit 3-pointers this season. So he is all of a sudden developed his game quite a bit as well. So
they've got this kid, Alex Caravan, who I'm becoming a big fan of, like long-term NBA potential. He's really good.
Yeah. So they are. I just like that team right now. And also you want to talk about a team that's going to look at the name on the front of the jersey and try and absolutely fucking run us over. That's UConn, because that semifinal loss is still very fresh in a lot of their minds. So that is the team that I have no desire to see.
All right. So then how's the last game play out? What are we predicting?
Yeah. It's so far in the distance, and I still don't know what the opponent's going to look like. That the only thing that I could say is that Alabama or Oregon both create interesting matchups, but I'm not even willing to go that far and to predict that. I just think it's going to be a matter of that's just going to be. I don't have anything to add.
All right. Well, I'm going to make a prediction because nobody cares anyway. Nobody's going to hold me to it. So I'm going to predict we end up playing Alabama after our UNC loss, because I don't believe in a JQ-led team. I don't think he's really the leader. I don't believe on teams that he's in. So I think Alabama picks up the first win. I think they lose to UConn. We end up playing Alabama, and I'll say we lose to Alabama, and we go 1-2 in the PK85.
Okay.
I'm sticking with it. 3-0.
Woo!
Alabama on Ken Palm paper is the best team in this whole bracket. They're better Ken Palm than North Carolina.
I'm going to say we face Alabama in the final, though, so they win throughout everything. I think this is going to be, for anyone who isn't like aware, there's this kid Brandon Miller, who is one of the most talented scorers in college basketball. He will be a top 10 pick. I think this will be a big coming out tournament for him, or for people on the national scale to see him. And then I think he does well versus us, but I think we'll pull it out. I'm sticking with the 3-0 rose-colored glasses.
I like it. I like it.
I'm sticking with it. I picked us to lose Temple. I also picked us to beat Michigan State, which
Yeah.
I'm going 3-0. I have no issue calling a loss when I see it. And if we get past Iowa State, I'm 3-0.
I do like the confidence on this team to pick up another win if we beat Iowa State. So how about that? How about that, Rob? I'll go with, we're going to go 2-1 with a win against Iowa State. So, and I have a loss against North Carolina and then a win in the final game. So that's where I'm
All
at.
right. We got a range of predictions here. I like it.
Yeah.
Keeping it wide.
Yeah.
So can you guys hear my kid right now?
Yeah. I heard her briefly in the background,
Yeah.
but not too much. No, she's clearly expressing herself.
Yeah, she's expressing herself. Very expressive kid.
That's all right.
But anyway, so we have a couple other narratives because we missed the Brandon Slater narrative, who probably had his best half that he's had all season at the second half of the game. I want to talk a little bit about Slater because he has been early on. He's been X Factory, which is what we kind of talked about with him, right? Like Dixon has been every part of Big East first or second teamer. And right now kind of top 10 in early National Player of the Year rankings, like from a statistical standpoint.
Which you heard it here first, right? The guy who said first team all Big East. I'm sticking to my guns here.
I mean, he is playing the part of it. And like Tom Izzo, I love that quote I posted on Twitter yesterday.
Oh, that was hot.
He was very complimentary of our players in general. He was very complimentary of our players in general. He said they're all 6'4" to 6'9", and they all look like Adonis, right? Like, so he's complimentary of our players and John Shackleton. But in addition to that, he specifically called out that he was like, yeah, Dixon, I don't know if God could guard him at times. So so Dixon is
a little hyperbolic, but the point stands.
Yeah, just a touch, a tiny touch hyperbolic, but for a podcast that does God's work, I think we can speak to that.
That's true. We do God's work. I keep forgetting that. Yeah.
So anyway, back to Slater, right? Because we've talked Daniels, we've talked the point guard situation. Let's talk Slater. He was like this guy, like he's so Samuels-esque, and I almost want to like talk about him in relation to Jermaine Samuels of last year, because he can be like takeover level good, and he can be non-fucking existent. And I just need him to be takeover level good all the time, especially until Whitmore and Justin's back. But even when they come back, I want him to be takeover level good with them back. Because here's what we know about Brandon Slater. He is like 22 of 22 from the free throw line. So it's almost like no excuse for him to not get to the rack and draw and get fouls on him. Like, he needs to be playing with that level of aggression to slash and get downhill and get to the rack, right? Like, I don't want him backing guys down and trying to score like that. I want him running full fucking speed at the hoop. And if he gets an offensive foul every so often because of that, I live with that. Like, make the defense freak out because they have this super athletic lefty running full speed at the hoop, coming downhill at them. Two, like, he has shown the ability to have awesome defensive prowess, both in terms of being able to guard every position 1 to 5, and also his block. Like, the block versus UConn last year is one of my favorite highlights reels ever plays. Like, and he's also shown that he could be a pretty adept 3-point shooter. He had I think it was last year, he was like a 40% 3-point shooter or something like that. So
he was not. We
had a year where he was a 40% 3-point shooter. It might have been 2 years ago.
Well, 2 years ago he played like 10 minutes a game. So sure,
he has a good 3-point shot, but he's not helping himself from the 3-point line because he doesn't drive. So when he plays aggressive, all of a sudden the
He
whole
shot,
rest
he
of the
shot,
game,
he shot 34% last year.
34%, sorry.
He
And he was
shot,
40,
40% the year prior when he
but
was,
on limited sample size.
yeah. He
Yeah.
took
Okay. But
he
he's
took
shown
one shot a game.
he's shown the ability to be a decent enough 3-point shooter, but he needs to show that ability to get to slash and get to the cup.
Yeah, my issue with, while I think he has shown, if you look at his statistics and his numbers, yes, you draw that conclusion that you just drew. The biggest issue I have with this narrative and expecting him to transform into this is that he hasn't actually shown a track record of being that aggressive, being that guy who's dynamically attacking hoop, being that guy who's just absolutely letting it fly every time he gets the ball in his hands. And I think, like, we were debating this offline, like, this is where the Samuels comparison actually falls down for me, with the exception of like that one stretch where Samuels like just straight up refused to shoot the ball, which was very strange. Remember that? That was like literally like would not shoot the
We
ball.
were on this podcast being Samuel, shoot the fucking ball.
Shoot the fucking ball. It's so weird.
I remember listening, being like, yeah, he's just not shooting.
It was so strange. It was so strange. But that stretch of games aside, Samuels was a guy who readily attacked the hoop, came off the dribble, created his own shot, and was like, okay, I got the ball, open look at three, I'm going to take the three. Slater just seems to be so like laissez-faire, like, yeah, I'll casually dribble into the lane, like, I'll back somebody down, like, I guess I'll take this shot. There's no fire there. And at some point, you start asking for something that just isn't there. It's not inherent in him as a player. And unfortunately, we're already in his 5th season, and he's had ample opportunity. And you would say, oh, he didn't see the floor his first couple years. Totally agree. But like, clearly he wasn't showing that in practice either. So at some point, you're just asking for something that may not be there and just hoping and wishing on a dream. And I think that's a little bit, unfortunately, where my head's at, that I want him to get there, but I don't expect him to, because I haven't seen any evidence of that full takeover ability. Samuels showed that takeover ability as a sophomore. As a sophomore on a loaded team against Marquette, he single-handedly won that game.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to get to, is that Marquette game. Samuels had shown once he got his legs under him, because again, as a freshman, he quite literally could not run. It was moving too fast for him. That game told me he has it. I think what we're doing here is we're mischaracterizing Slater. We want him to be an X factor. He's the glue guy. That's who he is. The X factors on this team need to be Longino. It needs to be some of the freshmen. Slater, I feel like we know who he is. We want him to take more of a leap forward. I don't know if he's going to do that. I think he's fucking phenomenal. I feel very confident with him on the floor. I don't know if he's going to be the X factor that we think. I think he is the glue that holds the team together.
I like this.
And that's the difference between Samuels. Samuels was an X factor as a youngin, and then even his whole career, like
he was the whole that was actually like, so really on the podcast, like the criticism for Samuels was that he was an X factor his whole career, when he should have become the known factor. Like he was an 11-point guy. He was an 11 and 6.5 guy last year, when like in the NCAA tournament, he was incredible, right? Yeah. Like he kind of was the reason that we made the Final Four run, like completely. But we were expecting him to be that way the whole season, and and he just didn't do that. Now, part of it was injury, part of it was he was banged up, but he never did that. So he was an 11 and 6.5 guy for the majority of last year. Right now, in this early season, Slater is like 13 and change and 6, right? So contributions a little bit higher. You expect that to come down when Whitmore and Moore come back, but that is like
I think Willie's take is the right one. I think that take is actually the best take on this entire episode. We are mischaracterizing Brandon Slater. He is a glue guy. What you see right now is what you're going to get. So continue to expect that type of player. That's just who he is. I love that. I think that's perfect. I'm totally on board with that.
I just think that's what it is. I love Jermaine. I wish him the best in Fort Wayne. I think he's doing all right.
Rough. Yeah. Fort Wayne.
Fort Wayne's rough, but last I saw
probably got bed bugs. For our long time listeners, we always joke that the G League folks got bed bugs.
Yeah, they have to stay in
They shit
bed-bug-ridden
hotels.
hotels.
Yeah. It's a little bit better now, but
Look,
not much.
I'm staying with the optimistic view on Slater. I do think he showed something to build on in this last game. Obviously, that could be fool's gold. I think that he did. I think the biggest thing that changed for me with Slater is that it was proof in the pudding that he needed to be more aggressive, and he did it versus a good athletic team, as opposed to just running roughshod over like LaSalle, right? Like so this is the Slater that we need him to be. We need him to be this type of thing, and I'm hoping that the fact that we need that means that he will do that. So I agree, Rob, wholeheartedly. He hasn't shown the personality to do that. He's an energetic personality. He's always been kind of like the fun culture guy who brings a level of lightheartedness to the group and does all of that. But he hasn't been a killer.
He's not a killer. Doesn't seem to be a killer.
Yeah, he's killer in moments, right? Like everything with Slater is like everything that he's done has been like a highlight reel thing, like the dunk versus Providence, the block versus UConn. Like he gets the Shaq Fit Man.
St. John's.
Yeah, correct. He cleans up the Shaq Fit Man place of the week awards, like with some frequency, but he needs to be more than just like the one highlight play a game type of situation. He needs to be the guy who is striking fear into the hearts of the opposing defense, and I'm not confident that he will.
Yeah.
I agree with the lack of confidence there.
And I don't want to people to think like, blue guy means something bad. Like there's nothing negative about that. I really liked his Michigan State game. And if that's the Slater we get going forward, that's going to help us really long term. But I think once again, we're blue guy, not X factor.
So is that actually a good transition into our awards? We mentioned the Shaq Fit. I know we've danced around Dixon, which I think in my mind he has to be the alpha dog.
He's the alpha dog,
like without a doubt.
He's gonna and right now he looks like he's gonna clean up the alpha dog awards this year.
Yeah, I mean, again, his stat line 24 and 9, one with a few assists and one foul against Michigan State. Just 3 of 7 from 3, including the last heave. Like that's a phenomenal stat line. And Chris, I think you alluded to this pre-show. Like if he's taking 5 or 6 threes a game, that's awesome in my mind. Like assuming they're good shots, but like that's the type of player you want him to be. So Slim Dix is just he's taken over so far. I'm liking what I'm seeing, living up to the billing.
Completely agree. Shaq Fit Man play of the week. There's not like a great candidate, but I will say that the Daniels steal on that inbounds play, and then the Longino, it's not necessarily one singular player, but Longino burying that 3 that really made that game like a oh fuck moment and kind of had Michigan State's crowd like kind of nervous.
Yeah.
That to me, that sequence, it's kind of a Shaq Fit sequence of the game, but like that was kind of I love that. So that was exactly what you needed in that moment. I guess if I had to go between the two, I probably picked Caleb for making the defensive play that led to the offensive 3-ball, but that's the best I got.
I'll give a small shout out to Chris Arch on blowing by Tyson Walker, getting to the basket, and then passing out to Dixon who hit a 3. I think we were down 70-63 at that point, and then Dixon hit the 3, made it 70-66. So that was not necessarily a man play, but just like a play that was the moment where I was like, all right, if this is Chris Arch, I can take it. So I want to give him a shout out there.
I don't know if I have one, to be honest. Nothing stood out to me.
There wasn't like an outstanding. Honestly, the best play was Michigan State's dunk on Slater.
That was the Shaq Fit Man play of the week.
That was the Shaq Fit Man play. That was.
Oh my God!
As the play was developing, I was looking at it and I was like, all right, well, if there's one guy who I want in this situation, Slater's the one guy who can get up and ruin this play. There was a part of me too that was like, Slater, just duck and cover, man. You
Yeah.
don't need to go on that poster.
Oh, I thought he was going to get it at least, but whatever. The one play that would have gotten the award for me, and we don't give would have, should have, could have, but Dixon's block from the back on Sissoko
Wasn't a foul.
Yeah, I mean, they called it a foul. What I love though, it was one, he got a ton of ball obviously to start, but it was a physical block too. And even after he picked up the foul call, he walked back and flexed, and that was a fuck you. Like I'm taking this game seriously. Like you're gonna have to go through me. And I was like, that's the attitude. Even after a foul call, it's like I'm here for it. That would have been easily the play for me. If that
It's
would
his
have
team. Like I said it before, it's his team.
This team needs to play angry ball, man. Right now,
really
they need to
do.
play aggressive, angry basketball, because, like, when Moore gets back and whatever, they can play that controlled thing. I guess that's the last thing to talk about. Like, I don't have a pass the fucking ball award of the week right now. I don't. I don't think there was any player who was so bad.
My one play was when Archek blew by somebody and then had a clean look at the hoop and then chose not to lay it up. And I screamed at the TV on that one.
Yeah, fair enough. But the final narrative is, when is this team going to get healthy? Right? Like we talk about, like, oh, when are they getting healthy? When is it healthy? When are they going to get healthy? There's been now a couple instances where Whitmore's been actually suited up in practice gear and practicing and shooting with the team and whatever, and then comes out in dress clothes for the game itself. I don't know where the conversation is around, like, any level of expectation. Is he coming back for the Iowa State game? Like, if he's practicing, like, he's got to be pretty close to playing.
Yeah.
So like, or like maybe not playing meaningful minutes, but like dressing for the game.
Yeah.
So like, where are we on the Whitmore situation?
If he's dressing, he's playing. I think if he's dressing, he's playing. Shout out to Villanova for being nothing gets out of that program. Nothing gets out. Like, secrets galore. I couldn't tell you anything, but
Villanova leaks less than the White House.
Yeah, quite literally.
Oh,
yes.
Not hard.
So I say all that to say, I mean, that's our narrative. And the thing is, we keep saying, when we get healthy, we could get healthy too late. Like,
totally.
We could get healthy too late, which is something to track. I think Whitmore's, if I'm betting, I think Whitmore's going to play in the PK85. I think that's where it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Just judging, like, I know he's practicing. I know he's, like, I've heard he's dunking in practice. He's still sitting. I feel like we're not going to know he's playing until he's dressed. And then all of a sudden at like 13-minute mark, he's checking in and it's like, okay, I guess this is happening. Yeah.
I have a hot take. I don't expect Whitmore to be this early on. I don't expect Whitmore to, like, change the whole complexion of this team.
I don't think it's that hot of a take.
This is not going to be like when I say get healthy, just to be completely candid, I mean when we have 70% of Justin Moore on the court. That's what I mean when I say when we get healthy. Like, Whitmore will be nice because he'll give us another front court player, he'll give us front court depth which we need, and we can't get Njoku on the court, and Patterson still looks a little bit lost out there at times. Like straight up, it'll be helpful from that perspective. It'll create another guy who the defense will have to key on, which will help Slater. It'll help Caleb. But candidly, like, I don't mean we're healthy until I get 70% of Justin Moore back. And I agree that it might happen too late.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we're all set here. So we will be back with you sometime shortly after the PK85 tournament. We will all be taking a break for the holiday. If I get the opportunity, you might find me on a Twitter space if Twitter still exists, past Thanksgiving. But I might be able to do a space, definitely not on Thanksgiving itself, but maybe on that Friday, maybe on that Sunday. So stay on the lookout on Twitter for us. You can follow us at The Full 40, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and we're starting to set up other profiles elsewhere. Although this Mastodon thing, I don't like it. It kind of is a shitty service, so I'm not a fan. But neither here nor there. And you can find us as always on Spotify, Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, and YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you everybody for listening. And as always, let's go Nova.